This is such an incredible room. I feel like we should be watching Dune or something behind the scenes. This is almost IMAX, a little smaller one. I know it's the end of the day, and I know you've taken on a ton of information today. And just like the speaker that was just before me, I was sitting here thinking about this conference saying, gosh, I hope I can create something or provide something to you guys that's informational. That's not something you've heard all day long. So I'm going to make an attempt. We're going to try some things. At first, I had some pieces I backed out because I wasn't sure what the Wi-Fi is, but we're going to try to do some demos. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully, you know what? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg set the bar. So as long as no one says, hey, Meta, during my demo, we'll be fine. I think we'll be good. The session that you're in, if you intended to or not, is Beyond Prompt Libraries, teaching AI and your teams to ask better questions. I'm Erik Schwartz. I worked in large corporates for a number of years, and now I've been in the UK for about 7 years, and I'm getting my own little one-man AI consultancy up and off the ground, and I call it the AI Expert.ai. So I work with small and medium businesses. I help them do literacy, so understand what AI is, especially at the C-suite, educate them for what AI can do, and help drive that into the organization. I help leaders then build a strategy. Where does it fit inside the organization? And then we think about how we build implementations. And that's when I work with partners to bring in larger scale implementations. So I'm always looking for partnership opportunities, as some of my friends that I know already know. But today, the lens that I'm going to take on prompt engineering is really about innovation. So how do we create an innovation culture inside of organizations, especially large organizations? They struggle to find ways to innovate. And with the tools that AI enables for us today, we can now enable innovations and taking bets across a large set of the team, because the ideas don't happen at the top of the pyramid anymore. They happen down in the staff, right? The customer support team, the sales team that are out interacting with the customers on a daily basis. That's where the ideas are. That's where the gold dust is. And so how do we enable them? The motivation for this prompt was really, we've been talking a lot about prompting and prompt libraries. And in fact, I feel a little bit bad because just on Wednesday, I was doing a training course, teaching a company how to build their first prompt library. But I'm going to tell you, like, that's so yesterday. That's like last week, building prompt libraries. But the motivation for this course was this lecture, this talk today was really because I had a gentleman in my business network who belongs to lots of boards. He is a career connector. He is a professional connector. One of these guys with 30,000 people connected on his LinkedIn. He just knows everybody. He started out his career at the boom of .com in Silicon Valley, has talked to his work, sat in a room with Michael Dell back in the 90s, like just connected to everybody. But he would just send me prompts. And I was like, stop. He's like, Erik, where's your prompt library? I'm like, I don't believe in it. I don't want a prompt library. When I want to engage with the AI, here's the flow that I do. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about meta prompting and how you can use that to engage with AI. So we spent 2 years building prompt libraries, but the libraries don't learn, right? They are static. They're stuck in time. So why does this matter, right? What is going on? For the looking at the timeline, we saw ChatGPT come onto the playground in late 2022, end of November, early December. ChatGPT shows up. And then people started saying, look, how do we interact with this thing? How do we get this thing to start to behave in a consistent way? How do we start thinking about bringing AI into our organizations? And if we want to scale AI across our organizations, building templates, building libraries that people can reuse are very handy things. It helps organizations create a consistent voice. It helps people build some more reliable behaviors. But then we get into a problem of like, how do we manage these things? We're just copying and pasting. Do we really understand what this AI can do for us? Do we really understand, are we really using if we're building a template and using a prompt library, are we really getting the benefit of this thing as it's growing? We've built for something in the past. So what I want to take you through a little bit today is that how do we start thinking about different ways of breaking that curve, of thinking about ways to use the AI to help me generate something that's useful for my organization. As I said, the copy and paste the prompts, that's so yesterday, template and playbooks are today, and where we're going, where I think we're going to go is we're going to start building these really interactive conversations with an AI. We're going to sit down and say, hey, AI, it's Thursday, and I have a problem I need to solve. I need to get my marketing done. I need to generate some leads for my sales campaign. I need to check on my messages. I need to check on the projects that I'm working, make sure the deployments are still going, make sure there are no bugs and the projects that I have here. And so this becomes a really interactive experience as I want to engage with my assistant to get work done, especially in my business, where I am now dealing with lots of different clients across lots of different domains, and I need to really engage with them. So I need something that's going to be more adaptive. And I'm going to shift from just building something that's static that I cut and paste into something that's more interactive. So let's ground ourselves a little bit, right? The classic report, we walk into the boardroom and we say, hey, Mr. CFO, you can now take the latest research report and you can cut and paste it. You can drop it into ChatGPT. You can say, hey, summarize this report. And in seconds, it starts to spit out, here's the earnings report, here's the data that we learned, here's the key sales, the key growth areas, right? But it's generic. So we can improve that, right? We can improve it and say, okay, now I want to think about from a risk perspective or from an opportunity perspective, or even quite a SWOT around this, what does this report mean for my business? Help me put more context. This creates a little bit more structure, okay? Then we get to level 3, right? Where we actually say, okay, actually, I want you to take this report. Not only do I want you to get insights about this report, but I want you to then take this report and I want you to think about optimizing it for clarity. I want you to optimize it for risk, and I want you to optimize it for opportunity. And so what's happening by just that simple phrase, going from the simple of just flag different things or highlight different things for me, when I ask it to rewrite it, I'm actually engaging the AI to use its brain to start kicking in the thinking mode, right? And so that's a little hack for us to get that AI to start to think. I was in a training session. I'm training the session on Monday where someone was giving pointers about how to give effective conversations. And it's about re-engaging the audience, creating different modalities, creating different ways to people for stand up and to engage. One of the reasons that we ask people to write things down, taking notes on your paper, is because it's a brain hack, right? If you write something down on a piece of paper, it comes in one time, it comes out because you have to think about it again as you write it down. And 3 times you have to deeply focus on the words you're writing on paper. So your brain is now 3x that information. You've taken that information, you've looked at it 3 times just by the fact of simply writing it, or asking someone to come back and say, tell me what you think, or ask a question. Your brain's now acting 3 times on the information. And so it drives a learning point home by having that interactive point. So we can do that with students, we can do that with the AI, okay? So a couple of simple techniques. I think we've seen probably most of these already throughout the course of the day. The role framing, right? This is the role that I need you to take. I need you to act as a CFO. We've talked a lot about an LLM, a large language model, has a ton of semantic latent knowledge, right? And you can really have it engage that knowledge by simply telling it, act in this role, act as a CMO, act as a marketing lead, act as a copywriter, right? And it knows because it's read everything on the internet. Because it's seen all this content, it can go off and engage and put context immediately into that task that you've given it because you're telling it to act in a role. If I want you to be a programmer, if I want you to be a developer, if I want you to be a tester or an engineer, suddenly it knows all kinds of skills and things to ask that it can switch in automatically simply by giving it the role, right? So now if we go back to that bad example, right, where you say, hey, I want you to be the CFO and summarize this report, suddenly I've dramatically improved that output because I've given it that role, okay? What are the 3 risks that we have? Poor hygiene, yeah, great example. Second one that we've seen before, this notion of scaffolding and chain of thought. Let's create multiple possible approaches, right? Let's create some frameworks. Let's evaluate the trade-offs. This is deep thinking examples. And then finally, I want you to recommend a solution. So this now becomes a place where AI can now think about the different ways it can present it. It can think about the trade-offs, and it can think about how it can actually recommend solutions. It's going to do that processing multiple times. And I think I have a quick demo to show you. Yeah, I have a quick demo. Cool, we can do this. All right, so I recorded this one because I wasn't feeling so lucky with the AI. So outline 3 possible designs for customer experience, and then evaluate each one for latency, cost, and user trust. So we're going to build a customer service agent. And then I want you to evaluate each experience from trust, latency, and cost, and then recommend one for me. All right, so the first one comes up is I'm going to build a RAG-based chat agent. Cool. It's latent, it's fast, it's really fast, it's low cost, it's high trust because it grounds the AI, it grounds the experience in our content. 2, second option, multi-agent workflow orchestrator. So multi-agents, it fits the new hype curve, right? It's a bit slower, it's a bit more expensive. Trusts are higher because it does a deeper evaluation. The third option it came was a voice-enabled agent. So voice-enabled agents must be super high frequency. A voice needs to come back in real time so you can hear it, but it's also super expensive because you're dealing with voice and you're dealing with the call center. And so it came back and said to me, okay, actually, let's pick option number one. Let's pick the hybrid RAG solution as our solution. And so we went through that process. It came through, did the trade-offs, right? And then it came back and then it gave me a rationale as I'm sitting down here, and that maybe I'm in developer mode. Maybe I'm sitting here and saying, I now want to create this multi-user agent. But now I've got the rationale. And so when I go back to my customer, I can say, here's why we're picking this approach. We're picking this approach because we're optimizing for latency, we're optimizing for cost, and we're going to create a solution that's highly trustable. And if the customer comes back and says, actually, I want something different, then we have different levers we can play. So that's first example. Second example, let's go on number two. Now I want to do some innovation. So now I want to take this prompt and I want to say, listen, let's create a prototype in a tool called Lovable. And I want to now, because I want to put this out in front of the customer. I want to engage with this experience. And so if you ever sit down with Lovable and say, hey, Lovable, which is a vibe coding tool that's out there, the whole point of Lovable is not to create a tool for engineers, right? The 400 million engineers are out there, but the 8 billion other people have never written code before. That's their game plan. But if you got into Lovable and say, I want to build a RAG-based agent, it'll say, great, that's cool. You'll sit there and you'll burn through all of your tokens, right, in the first conversation, just doing your product definition. So what I do when I talk to teams that are doing innovation, I take an exercise like this, where we'll sit down and have a session with ChatGPT. We'll really flush out, and I did it obviously in one shot, but you would do it in a couple more shots to really define the product you were. Then you say, hey, Lovable, spit me out a prompt, or hey, ChatGPT, spit me out a prompt that I can then go use with Lovable. Now we're going to go see, let's see how this works. I'm going to actually do this live, so fingers crossed. I've copied and pasted this Eli prompt into Lovable. I'm going to kick this off. We'll let it run. We're not going to sit here and watch it, but we'll come back and check on it in a few minutes after we're going through our conversation. And for me, that's a very typical workflow, right? So I'll be sitting on a phone call with a client. I'll be looking at a new opportunity. I'll have an agent running in the background. Maybe I'll have Claude Codes fixing a bug, or maybe pushing an update to my website. I'll have Lovable running on another window, trying to put out a prototype so I can get ready for the next call. But I can do that because I'm a one-guy consulting agency. So showing you a little bit. Moving into the kind of the next bit, right? So prompts that design prompts. Building a prompt, right, that can build another prompt. And I know this is absolutely bleeding edge, right? But it allows us to create something that's more interactive. I don't have to rely on a prompt library. I can start with an idea. I can start with a concept. I can start with a conversation. So this is a need. I have a client that came in and said, I need to build a solution that helps me connect my CRM system to my project management system. I am a lawyer and I need help with getting access to information in my email system. And so I can now adapt my work with AI to solve solutions for these clients. I can generate options. I can go back to them with different cost options. I can feel comfortable that I can actually solve something for them. I can iterate on these things. I can test them, refine them, and I can share them back. Okay. And then it creates this flywheel where now I have a system now that's getting smarter. ChatGPT is now remembering that we did this engagement, right? ChatGPT, I want to go back and say, hey, remember that email solution we put together for those lawyers? Do you remember how that worked? And so, sure, of course I remember how that worked. And it brings it back, and it's there for me. It's there as my assistant to help me remember that. All right, so here is so not to take away from prompt libraries and where organizations are moving right now. And I get it, I'll reiterate this before, and I know there was a talk earlier about building prompt libraries, and I think it makes a ton of sense for organizations to invest in them to drive consistency. There's a lot of concern now about risk and about how do we use AI and how do we make sure that we're not affecting our brand or we're not overcommitting things. So I think that makes a lot of sense, but there's also some risks that come with these templates. Potentially, how do we include the context? We talked about date, who owns this thing? How do we trace what's going on behind the scenes if there's just a big prompt there that I'm cutting and pasting? Now, you may argue with me that if I'm having the AI do it, is it more trustworthy to have a prompt that's been built out and validated by humans versus something that's generated by AI? You're making a trade-off. You're looking at dynamicism versus consistency. And that's a balance that you can make. As we move forward and we think about building this culture of prompt fluency, here's a sort of an approach that you can take to think about how you might incorporate this into your team. Someone in the team identifies a need, right? They generate this meta prompt. The AI response comes back and then can test it in real context. There's a human in the loop that can validate that this is actually getting closer, and then we can share that principle back with the team. It's also another way for us to say, let's quickly go out and expand into a new set of domain, a new set of knowledge domains. What's nice too, when you think about the elements that need to go into your meta prompt, we can think about the role. We can think about the context. We can think about the tasks. We can think about the format, the tone, the constraints, the output that needs to be there. Let me see. This is now becoming the new way that we design systems. All right. So instead of being in a model where we are building systems that are deterministic and repeatable and they're locked in place, we're now creating systems that are dynamic, that are living, that are moving with the needs of the business, moving with the needs of the customer, and moving with the needs of the organization. So we move from this notion of a classic software architecture into something that's much more modular. Let's actually try the one in real time. We're gonna work on a prompt, and we're gonna test it. We have a few minutes, so I'm gonna give this a go. And we'll come back and check on our lovable for a second. What I want to do is I want to identify a real task. So I'm going to have you guys give me a couple of ideas here. We're going to construct the meta prompt right here. So here's the chat. So let's see what this looks like. So I want a prompt that helps my team do what? Shout out some ideas. Thank you. Boston, Texas. Okay, and then generate these four. What am I going to do this for? They're optimized. 3 versions are optimized for. What are my 3 personas I want to deliver them for? Yeah. All right, off we go. It's a tiny. Make this bigger. Here we go. I can actually make this bigger. Great. This is a use case for prompt fluency. So we have one sales-oriented prompt. We've now generated. So now we've generated. What we've done is now we've created prompts that are goal-oriented. You're a data researcher helping a team identify healthcare products, find all the medical locations in Austin, Texas for each one, return. So this is the sales-driven one. So I've now enabled my Salesforce, right, with one prompt. 2, I have campaign manager. So I can build a campaign for each of these, right, find the locations, and then for each entry, return this. And then a client-facing prompt. So now we've taken this, let's build this. So this is the meta prompt that we've created. Let's take this, and now we've built it, and now we're going to run it. So now we've kicked it into thinking mode automatically. This is GPT-5, so this does this automatically. Getting the medical facility data. And we're kicking in the research for the prompt. It's going to kick us into research mode. Okay, while that's running, let's check on here's Eli sitting here waiting for us. So I went off and built a set of prompts for my sales team, my go-to-market campaign around medical prompts. I've got Eli who's sitting here rating as a customer service. Where is my product? Now this is in Lovable, but here's a chatbot that's up and running, right? And it's obviously it's tied to dummy data. We haven't grounded this in here, but now I've got an assistant that's up and running. It's connected, and I can take this code. I can connect this into GitHub. I pass it through GitHub. I bring it down locally, and I can push out the rest of that code into Claude Code, into my development environment. So now I've got a UI that's working here, right? And that just happened through that prompt that we did. Oh, there he is. Here's a list of medical locations, and here's my spreadsheet. Here's my research. You can't see that. It's too small, isn't it? Well, we can make this bigger. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. Boom. So it knows me. So I built you a CRM ready seed list. And so now I'm ready to go off with my sales campaign to go do that. And so I haven't built a prompt library to do this. I sat down with a couple of quick questions and said, let's get going. Help me solve a task. This is what I need to do today. Okay. The obvious next step here is we got to go validate this data, right? That this has not been hallucinated. And so the very first thing that I'll do is I'll go back and say, all right, please go back and take this list and iterate through it and validate that these are actually real businesses. And that's a great agent task to do. Or I can hand it off to an intern in my organization and say, before you put these into the CRM, make sure these are valid. But I've got a seed list. I've got a task list of things that I can look for. And or set up a calling agent and start dialing these phone numbers and see if that works, right? That's another opportunity there. So anyway, you guys get the gist of it, right? So we've got an AI assistant running in Lovable. What was nice is I think the key thing for this, going back to this Lovable example for just a quick second, is I didn't burn all my free tokens just getting this interface up and running. One shot and it's done. It's out there and I've got a working prototype. I could take this idea now back into my organization and say, look at what we can do. It's not done. We need to invest in it more. We need to tie our data into it. We need to ground it. We need to build a RAG system behind it so that it's actually providing the right data. But I now have something that I can go and talk to my stakeholders with and say, this is why we should invest in these tools, okay? And so that's the idea. It's enabling innovation. All right, a couple minutes left. Let me bring this home so that we're done here. Yeah, so we built one. We built a prompt. We built 3 prompts, and then we ran it, and then we ran one of them. So we chose one of the options, which was the sales option, and then we got a report out of that, which is great. All right, just to ground this out, as we think about driving out AI throughout our organization, there's a couple of key elements when we think about an AI strategy inside of an organization. One is, I think it's important that organizations have policies, right, about what you can and can't do with AI inside your organization, what tools you can and can't use. So employees have clear rules. So they're not going off on their own and just using a tool that's unsanctioned or setting data out that they don't know how to use. They're actually engaging with tools that are known and understood. But the key thing is that we've got to get our teams engaging with these tools because, again, as I said earlier, that's where the ideas flow. The ideas are flowing from the bottom up. And we need to invert the pyramid so it's not top down, command and control, it's up. And that's where the ideas will flow up. With AI, we can do a lot more experiment in parallel, but we've got to put the right safety and guardrails around that for everybody. So we're moving from this code literacy, from the data literacy to prompt literacy, and then who knows what the future will hold, right? Will it be agentic? Will it be a magic 8-ball? I think, this is how we're doing this now because we're changing the culture of how we think and solve problems. That's, I think, the key thing. And we're teaching the AI to ask better questions. Okay, so that's me. I put a prompt fluency toolkit up on my website. Feel free to grab that. That's there if you want to have it. So some sample prompts, some processes you can go through. That's my website, the AI Expert. That's me, so grab that real quick. And thank you, that's me. And once I'll put the cameras down, I'll say this is the final one. This is me, and this is the slides from this deck if you want these as well. So if you want to reproduce this on your own and you want to create this, one of my favorite AI tools, this is all done in Gamma, love Gamma. I saw a couple done in Gamma today. I just can't write a PowerPoint anymore now with Gamma. It's funny once you start doing things with vibe coding tools, like going back and actually typing code in or connecting boxes. I know there's an N8N conversation later, but drawing wires between boxes just feels so 2023, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, that's me. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of this, 1 or 2 things. And I hope it was really lovely to see you today. So thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your insights and for energy. I think we have time for a couple of questions, maybe.
Amazing.
Thank you, Erik. Just a couple. You refer to the AI as a brain, which is interesting. So I just wanted to know then which AI models actually truly think. And then as a follow-on, when you use the ChatGPT, when it says thinking, taking a little bit longer, isn't that just really a misnomer for I'm trying to retrieve more information, you just have to wait a little bit longer. It's not actually truly thinking.
Yeah, so I'm not a cognitive scientist, so it's a great debate. And I think it's a good thing to think about. But we refer to this mode where there are academic studies. If the AI can take longer to go get information and process it more deeply, it does drive up the accuracy, okay? And so one of the ways that we alleviate the hallucinations is that quick response, right? The idea to bring back a response quickly and say that it believes it. And so it's thinking about it, and so it's driving up accuracy. Is it thinking? Is it conscious? I think we'll debate that for a while. Where you see this behavior right now is in GPT-5 and Claude. Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus are doing this thinking behavior. So
it's just that in the media, AI is now everywhere. And for the layperson, when you start saying thinking, they automatically then think it's becoming sentient, and it can actually think and do this. So actually, realistically, it can't. And universally across the world, there is no compliance here. Like you were just saying, you have to make sure you have your ethical standards